What is up, everybody? We are back in the sanctuary today. We have Mr. Zach Oxford sitting down with us. Zach, thanks for being here, man.
Man, I appreciate you having me. Yeah.
I was disappointed that your videos, your reels just popped up on my Facebook like a couple months ago, and I started seeing like the Oxford farms and everything you guys got going on, and I was like, why am I just hearing about this? Like, I had no idea. And then I saw that you were in Norris City too, which like my parents live there.
Yeah.
And I was just like, why have I not heard about it? I was like really confused that I had heard that you were doing this.
Yeah, we've been doing it for a little while, and we've tried to be more consistent just here recently with just putting out content.
Sure.
In December, our goal was to put out a video a day, and for the most part, I think that we did that. Which, man,
it's a lot.
It's kind of hard.
Yeah.
Putting out a video, even if it's just a reel a day or a post a day, like that can get taxing sometimes.
Filming it and then having to edit and do all of that yourself. And back, please. Yeah, it can definitely be a lot. That's what. So are you still putting the videos out daily on?
We're not doing. We haven't been doing daily. Part of that we got slammed the beginning of the year at work. So with work being slammed, I've not put out a video a day. I'm trying to still do a few a week, which we've been pretty good about that. But I'm currently not doing a video a day.
Yeah, I don't blame you. That's like just doing this like once a week, and it can be a lot.
Sure.
So Oxford Farms, you guys, I was gonna say owner, but I think it's fair to say co-owner. I know this is the family affair. Mm-hmm. You, the wife, your kids.
Yep.
It's a whole. Definitely takes everyone.
Dude, it does.
To keep that thing going on a daily basis, I'm sure. I was just watching your reels. It's got to be all day, every single day. For the people that don't know, real quick, the people that don't know about Oxford Farms and the lifestyle that like you've committed to now, this homesteader's lifestyle. For the people that don't really know, what does that kind of entail? What does that like mean to you, as far as the lifestyle? Yeah.
So Oxford Acres. So this came about 3 years ago, right around 3 years ago, and it's a family affair. Mm-hmm. It's a way we can connect with our kids through it. Our kid, for the most part, our kids enjoy it. It's nothing that we're not forcing the kids to do it.
Sure.
Our oldest isn't as interested in farm stuff. Some of the other, it's kind of depends on the day.
Yeah. For sure.
One of them in particular, Olivia, our 5-year-old, she's all about it.
Loves it.
Every day. Dad, can I go do this with you? Can I go feed the animals? Can I do this? Can I do that?
Yeah. Is that the one that you guys slept outside? I saw that video where you guys were like, the girls were wanting to sleep outside, and like, the next morning you're like, there's just you and one of your girls. You're like, the other one made like 30 minutes. I laughed so hard watching the video. So Jocelyn,
that was Jocelyn that made it all night. Jocelyn's kind of our tough girl. She's the one, like she's much more my personality.
Yeah.
She likes she loves doing the farm stuff. She's much more like the adventurer, like let's go sleep outside in the freezing cold, and Dad's like, I don't know if I really want to do that. Olivia's more the one that wants to be involved directly with the animals, gardening and that sort of thing. But that was Jocelyn in that video, actually.
Yeah, that was funny. I was watching that, and the next morning, and then there was just one still out there.
Yeah. One tapped out after about 30 to 45 minutes in the cold. Right. So, but to answer your question about, time. So I think that a lot of people get the idea that this is something that takes hours and hours a day to take care of all this stuff.
Right.
Now there have been, one of my big goals was I wanted to set up systems that make it easy on a daily basis. I don't have time. Like I still work. I work 40 plus hours a week.
Right.
I don't have time to come home every day and spend 3 hours taking care of animals all night long until dark.
Yeah.
Now there's days where we do that. Just fixing things, taking care of whatever it might be. But for the most part, we probably spend an hour a day taking care of animals, and the majority of that honestly is milking the cow. If you were to eliminate the milk cow, which we love our milk cow, but if you were to eliminate the milk cow, 30 minutes we could have all of our pigs, all of our chickens, our rabbits, sheep, dogs.
Probably
all
comes in
taken
like
care
cycles. Yeah, like every couple months, things probably pick up real busy, and then whether that's you're harvesting stuff or whether
gardening time. Yeah, when we get into like gardening season, that does take up a lot more time. Right. Just between pulling weeds, and especially you start all of your tomatoes come in at once, your green beans come in at once, and you got to process all those things. So those can take time, but for the most part, we're probably right now averaging about an hour a day.
I got you. That's not bad at all, really.
It's really not.
Not whenever you watch the videos and you kind of see what you guys have going on, you see it and you're like, wow. And then to hear that, it's really just like an hour. That's pretty wild. I know that you said that you started this back around COVID. Mm-hmm. Can we get into kind of where you guys were at, like maybe let's say like 6 months before?
Sure.
Before you guys kind of took that first leap into making this switch in your lifestyle and the way you guys are doing things. What was that like? Was it normal? Was it like Walmart, like stuff off the shelves and like the whole nine like everyone else is doing, it seems like?
We lived a very normal life.
Yeah.
So this all got kind of started around the COVID time, and a lot of things changed for a lot of people during that. We started to just in general question a lot of stuff, but let's just say 6 months prior, we were your traditional, like at that time, Haley was working part-time. When we got married, she was working full-time. She went down to part-time, PRN, and then all the way up into she's just full-time stay-at-home mom at this point. But around that time, she was probably PRN, part-timer, working 2/12s probably per week, something like that.
Yep.
And we were your typical, we cooked a lot of our own meals. But everything was grocery store. We relied on the grocery store for everything. At that point, we would have had Olivia would have been born already. So Olivia would have been real young. Our youngest wasn't in the mix yet. We would go and do the Costco thing, the Sam's Club thing, prepare our meals, but we started to question a lot of the food stuff.
A lot of people did. I think it was around COVID. I feel like there's a lot of truth that comes out around COVID. There were a lot of things that got opened up. There were even a lot of things that today, people that like don't want to talk about it or act like these things aren't happening, and I don't know what the deal is with it.
Oh yeah.
I want to sit down and talk about all of it. I'm interested in like the food stuff. Like me and Briley, we eat pretty well. Like stay fit, stay in the gym. I like to, now that we're both sober and on that route, this stuff really interests me. And so whenever, like I said, I heard you kind of talking about the things that you were seeing. That's what I was wanting to ask you. You had made a comment in that interview I listened to, and you said that like you were seeing things. Certain things were causing certain things. Certain things that were put in our foods were causing certain things with kids.
Sure.
Is that kind of where this started?
So I think a lot of it started with chicken. Okay. So I read a book. So we started questioning things. And my wife is way more on the medical side of being a nurse. She was a nurse for like 10 years. And she did a lot more of the research into, we can get into vaccines here in a little bit, but we'll just say we started to question what was in our food. That led us to getting chickens. Mm-hmm. And I bought a book, and in this book, we were just going to do like have 6 to 10 like backyard chickens, get some eggs, kind of what a lot of people do.
Right.
We started reading a book by a guy named Joel Salatin, Pasture Poultry for Profit, I think was the name of it. Mm-hmm. And he described in that book the way that chicken was grown in the conventional system. And you've got these big hen houses, and in these hen houses there's thousands and thousands of birds. They're in cages. They're dropping their manure all over the place. Mm-hmm. And they do have systems in place to clean that manure out, but there's an incredible amount. The ventilation systems, how state-of-the-art they might be, they're not great.
They're not that great. If you ever drove by one,
you can smell them from a mile away.
If you ever drove within the vicinity, I know there's like a couple, I think, like down in Kentucky.
There is, yes.
You don't have to be anywhere near that place, but like if you're within the vicinity, you can
smell it.
The nastiest, craziest smell. You're like, what in the hell? You're like, what is that? There's no, and then you find out, you're like, that's where like your chicken nuggets are coming
exactly.
from. You're like,
well, so what was happening? So as we were reading this book, these chickens, they're breathing in all this fecal particulate. Mm-hmm. And the way that he described this was that fecal particulate gets in their nasal passageways, and it would essentially cut little micro grooves, and this fecal particulate was getting into their blood. Well, this was back, years and years and years ago.
Acting like drugs, like for chickens, kind of.
It's like poop. It's getting poop into the meat.
Right.
And so they found it, so your big names, they realized, like, oh, crap, we can't be having poop in our meat. Yeah. So they end up pumping them full of, like, essentially antibiotics in order to counteract it, to fix that.
Yeah.
Well, then we had the big no antibiotics and meat craze. Well, so to counteract that, then they start vaccinating all these chickens with all kinds of stuff, and in order to
at what point
have a
you're
healthy
like,
chicken.
What is this?
Yes.
Like, do you think, like, so many people are just like, to hear you, like, you're like, this just chicken you get from the store, and to hear all the processes.
Yes.
And you're like, what? And like,
so you've got all this chicken that's pumped full of stuff, and we're like, there's got to be side effects to this.
Yeah.
So we're like, we're going to start with just raising our own chickens.
Yeah.
So we bought like 50 meat birds, and we were raising. This is when we lived in Mount Vernon still. Like we lived in a yard. Like our backyard, dude, was like 7,000 or 8,000 square foot. Like it was not big in any way. We didn't even have hardly a tenth of an acre.
Right.
So we're like, we're going to raise our own chicken back here. So that's exactly what we started doing. We went rogue. We bought some rabbits. We're raising rabbits. We're raising chickens in our backyard. We're paying off our neighbors with eggs so they don't tell on us, that kind of thing. Because there's laws against having it in town and whatnot, and all that kind of stuff.
Which is crazy in itself. But
it is.
Anyway,
it is.
Yeah.
So we started to question what was in our food, and that led into, as we again continue to walk that path, Haley really started looking into what were the side effects of these things long term. And again, as parents, like we want to know how's this going to affect our kids. It's easy to get the mindset of like, maybe I'm too far gone, which I don't think that we are, but
no.
I'm too far gone, but I want to save my kids kind of mentality. Yeah. So we start looking into, what's this cause long term in kids? What are the vaccines doing? And that led into the big, all the vaccine stuff that we started looking into.
Yeah. Which is wild too.
Oh yeah.
And like, yeah, before we get into it, just because I want to talk about the farm and stay on that for a minute. You guys, so I know you guys had just said that, or I think I'd watch, you guys are going for like 1,000 meat birds this year, is that right?
So
1,000. So 1,000 in a sense of, I'm assuming you guys will be selling and all that kind of thing too. And then I saw another thing, the food controversy. You were talking about a woman. Or there's a store, the woman that was wanting to sell, you'd mentioned if she's making her jams, whatever, she wants to sell, well, then the FDA wants to come in and try to regulate that. Is that real? Do you have issues with this?
So personally, I don't.
Like you haven't had anyone come over and they're like,
I've not had anyone show up and at my farm and say, you can't do this.
Yeah.
For the most part, we follow the rules on what we can sell and different things like that. But the whole idea
what are a couple
of food,
of those rules? What does that consist of?
Like meat birds, for instance. So like I could, if you wanted to buy a meat bird from me, you say, Zach, I want to get a meat bird. I know how to process my own chicken. There is no rule against me processing a chicken on my farm for my family's consumption.
Sure.
And even in Illinois, you still have, I think you can sell, if you want to sell directly from the farm, you can get a permit to sell up to 5,000 birds per year, which is a tremendous amount of birds. Sure. You can sell 5,000 per year as long as they are butchered in a clean facility on your farm. You can sell direct to consumer that way.
Clean says who? I'm assuming they send a representative or someone that would come.
So like the health department could come and check up on that if they wanted to. So I want a little more flexibility with that. So I don't have a permit to do that. So the birds that we butcher,
like big corporation able to have a grasp on things like this, and then it's like
it's all about the money,
right?
They want me to pay the permit. They're probably really never going to check on me.
Absolutely nothing. To them.
It's just you pay your $100 permit and get your the state's going to get their money. But if I take them to a licensed USDA facility, you can say, hey, Zach, I want a meat bird, and I'm going to bring it to you then. Okay. I can that sort of transaction, and that creates a lot of flexibility that I can go to farmers markets and sell at a farmers market as long as the county allows that, which we've not run into issues with.
That's if you sent your birds through a
licensed facility. So I connected up.
But then I'm assuming taking money out of your pocket then at the end of the day.
Yes. So I'm paying a processing fee, which then I have to pass off to the consumer as well.
Which then you have to try to get back at some point within drive prices for everybody.
Yes. As opposed to if I just did it myself, which I know how to butcher a chicken very well, and we're going to end up doing some workshops teaching people how to do that. Like, my goal isn't to feed all of Southern Illinois.
Sure.
I'd rather you and Briley know this is how we go process our own chicken and have 10 chickens in your backyard than have to come to me to do it for you.
It's creating that lifestyle and that idea. I think living in a way that probably we were all meant to live. In a sense that probably we all should be doing things like this in a very similar sense. This is how probably our ancestors, the people way before us, were doing things, and it worked for so many years. Yeah. And it just seems like we're so far away from a lot of things that we did that got us to where we are now.
So I was just going to say, to circle back to the food freedom part of that, what I would want for Americans is if you produce a good, and I trust you. Right. So I trust Chase to raise the best tomatoes in Southern Indiana. Like, let's just say. Yeah. I don't think that I should be told I can't come and purchase from you. Right. I don't think that you should, as long as I'm trusting you as the producer, and we have this just because what the deal is if you start producing crappy tomatoes, I'm not going to come to you. Right. So you have an incentive to produce a good product. Yeah. Just like the whole raw milk thing, which I talk a lot about on my page, I feel like. Mm-hmm. If people trust me to raise my cow in a healthy way, free of these, diseases, and have my cow tested or, whatever it might be, I should be allowed to go and sell them raw milk if they want it.
Yeah. Yeah, what is this extreme oversight on? Because you see it in everything. It's like with food, it's just such an overreach on. Yeah. Whose business is it that if I want to come to you for a certain product and I think that you have the best product there is, I guess it just comes down to big government being mad that that's just money out of their pocket, money that they're not able to kind of control or oversee. I don't know. It's just
when it comes to meat, which is very regulated. There's 4, and I couldn't name them off the top of my head, but there's 4 main companies that control all of the meat system in the United States. Okay. All of the meat runs through those 4 companies, or 98% of all meat runs through those main 4 companies. Those big 4 companies, they're the ones supporting the universities. Right. They're the ones supporting the research departments at wherever it might be. Mm-hmm. So they're funneling and they're in order to push agendas. Sure. These legislators get kickbacks for all this kind of. So it's of course you start tracking the money down. Or you follow the money. That's where you're going to find the answer to those kinds of questions. Yeah. So.
Yeah, it's wild. It's just it's just a wild thing to me that they can come in, especially with. I don't know what it was. You made that video, and I just started thinking. I was like, if I just wanted to start making T-shirts out of this back room of my house and selling them, and then basically some clothing company gets mad that I'm making money, taken away from them, and now they it's a wild.
And they've got big money in order to get lawyers
big
involved.
Lawyers, they can
you got to stop doing this.
We can drag this out for 5 years, and you'll have absolutely nothing left at the end of it, and they'll take everything from you in the process. Well, I'm glad to hear that you haven't had anything like that and haven't had anyone coming out there trying to. But hopefully that doesn't happen.
Sure.
But yeah, So after the chickens, what was kind of the next thing that stuck out to you as far as things not really adding up and things you kind of being I know you said there was a lot of chemicals you were seeing. Mm-hmm. That chemicals you were seeing that was in the food you're seeing in the grocery store, but then you're like, wait a second, I'm also seeing that under my kitchen sink at home.
Sure. Yeah. So that led into that just sent us, and I couldn't probably say exactly what the next one was, but looking at what was going into our meat. Then we start looking at, what are all these things that are in our food? You start looking at the dyes, what kind of issues that causes with kids. And Haley did a really good job of investigating those, probably way better than I did. And she'd be the one to probably ask for specifics on that. But we started just reading the ingredients on, a box of Fruit Loops. It's a chemical concoction, and on the back of a lot of this stuff.
And you see in a lot of other countries, it's not. Sorry to interrupt.
No, you're fine.
The cereal thing. I saw this video where they were talking about there's 2 different Kellogg's has 2 different corporations that has to sell to the United States, and the different ones that have to sell to Canada. Yeah, and I'm like,
Just like mac and cheese. Like mac and cheese in the United States is significantly different than what it is in European countries.
Yeah.
So like European countries have banned so many of the ingredients because of their links to I'll just say chronic disease. Just all kinds of chronic disease. Right. They've banned all these different ingredients, but yet why are we allowing this in the United States?
That's what blows my mind. Like,
and I don't know. Unless there are just part of my gut almost
is the money
like,
like just from allowing certain things like dyes and like it's like what is there to gain from that as compared to what it is hurting people as a whole? Like
my gut. This is just a gut. I don't have necessarily proof of this, but what my gut says is
anyway.
Yeah. I think my gut kind of says that there truly are incredibly evil people in the world.
Yeah, I agree.
That are ruled by money.
I agree.
And if we can keep people sick, and we know that we can sneak these ingredients into food, if we can keep people sick, then big pharma is going to continue to make money. It's just like if you were running a hotel. If you own a hotel, you want that hotel, you want as many beds as possible to be full. You have to. In order to be profitable, you have to fill those beds. A hospital without beds full is not going to be a profitable hospital. So if big food and big pharma are in bed with each other, which they are, then if we can, and they're paying each other off, legislators as well. So if we can keep bad stuff in food, we're going to continue to see people stay sick, chronic disease. The most profitable individual to big pharma is a 3 or 4-year-old that's chronically ill and is going to be chronically ill for the rest of their life because they've got 80 years ahead of them.
Sure.
If they can keep a 4-year-old on asthma medication or ADHD medication or anxiety, get them on these antidepressants at an early age and keep them hooked.
Create addictions from a young age.
Oh my gosh.
Addictions that they probably didn't have before.
And you teach them that, hey, in order to feel this way, you've got to take this pill.
Such a simple fix. It's right here. And it's so available.
And it makes
give it to you.
Your kid, I mean, I don't know, I couldn't do the numbers off the top of my head, but you take this inexpensive pill, but you give it to someone for an entire lifetime.
Yeah.
That's a tremendous amount of money for a country of 300 million people.
Yeah.
So
and it's getting worse.
Yeah.
And drastic.
We're giving Ozempic to children these days.
Yeah, I saw a study they were talking about like Ozempic and like kids under the age of 12 or something was like this crazy stuff. I didn't read a whole lot into it, but because it's just that shit is so bizarre to me. I was like, I can't even.
Just change the lifestyle. Why not teach a kid to eat healthy?
And I can speak on this because I know for a fact like a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, whenever I first went and I got on anxiety medication and depression medication, at one point I was taking 3 different things. I was also like drinking all the time, doing all these things. And I can say like I stopped drinking. I eat pretty healthy, like I would say 85-90% of the time.
Sure.
And I work out 7 days a week. And now I'm on 0 medication. I don't know the last time I've touched an anxiety. I refuse.
Sure.
I'm mad at myself that I did. I look back and I'm like, I do think there's like little bridges where it can be necessary.
I do too.
To just get you through.
Absolutely.
Until you can get that mindset to where you're ready to change. But like, it should not be your whole identity, I don't think.
To be clear, I'm not against medicine. I think that that modern medicine, it's incredible what doctors can do.
You can't deny the fact that it has overall saved more lives than it's killed, but I just don't.
And I'm not even mad at the doctors. Most of these doctors are incredible people with incredible hearts. It's they're facing court cases, behind closed doors that you don't know about. I'm sure. It's starting in the universities.
Yeah,
like it's starting way back at the very beginning of their entire career. This is all they know. It's just prescribe this, prescribe that. This is the fix. So,
yeah, I know. I won't say who my doctor was. It's not a shot at her because I really like her. But I think I talked about this on the podcast before with Briley. She made a comment to me, and I think about it a lot. She made a comment to me the first time I went and saw her that starting me on anxiety medication, I had to be prepared that this was probably going to be forever.
Yeah.
Once I start taking this pill, I probably won't be able to live without it. That's what I was told.
Yeah.
That once I start taking this, I probably won't be able to function without it. I'm pretty much guaranteed that once I start this pill, I will be taking a pill every day forever. And that's what I was told.
Yeah.
And I was asked if I was okay with that. And at the time I was, because I was just like, I was ready to, just completely be done with it, forever. So I was willing to do anything. And like looking back now, I'm like, wow. Like, I was 23. And that was just it. Like,
yep.
That's like the rest of your life. That's what you did. That's it.
Yeah.
I don't know what else to tell you.
Yep.
And it's like, I'm not mad at my doctor for that. I don't go there anymore. Not because of that, because we moved. But, I'm just like, and that was for me, who's someone I feel like I was like, what about like people that are really having issues that probably like,
sure.
And then you start adding all these medications and like, they haven't thought straight their whole life.
Ever.
Like, and this, like I said, I was 23, 22 whenever I first ever like took an anxiety medication. So like, but these kids that started at like 5.
Yep.
I can't imagine.
Yeah.
No wonder they're out of control.
Yeah.
They're emotional and they're upset and they don't know what's going on.
Yep.
Like, because they're a mess inside.
And I don't know what the statistics are on the percentage of, let's just say kids under 10 are on long-term medication, but I'd imagine it's high.
Yeah.
I'd imagine it's pretty high compared to maybe what it was 10 to 20 years ago. And I would imagine that I think a lot of this goes back to the food that we're putting in our body. I think that food truly is medicine. Yeah. I think that whenever you're eating the right kinds of foods and nutrient-dense food, Joel Salatin taught at one point, I listened to a podcast by him, and he was talking about how just your standard tomato, like your tomato nowadays has essentially 10% the nutrient value that it had 20 years ago.
Yeah.
So if we can get back to not only just growing a lot of our own food, but nutrient dense food, and that starts with good healthy soil,
just a soil that's quality,
that's not bombarded with all the chemical fertilizers. And again, this isn't a slam on even big ag. It's just we've degraded our soil so much over time. Healthy soil is going to produce healthy food. Healthy food is going to create healthy people.
Sure.
And so if we can get back to that place of grocery stores allowing, especially these small grocery stores, allowing people to sell really high quality products through their store,
right?
I think we could see a big shift in just the health of the United States.
Yeah, especially these small grocery stores. I don't understand why, like places like, especially in Norris City, and if you have the little Wonder Market, and you would think it would almost be easier for them too. These little places like that it would always be easier for them to deal with someone like yourself.
Sure, and I think that Wonder Market is doing that. I think that they have reached out to local people.
Yeah.
I see a lot of the stuff that they post on social media, and they're welcoming. I mean, there was a 4-year-old I think she's 4 or 5-year-old making laundry detergent.
There you go.
And the Wonder Market selling that kind of stuff, and it's free of your artificial scents, your whatever all the stuff is they put in laundry detergent, and that's how this little girl's advertising this.
Yeah.
Awesome. Start the kids young doing that kind of stuff. And if you have a local business like the Wonder Market that's willing to support that,
right, phenomenal.
And I think that they are trying to do that there.
Yeah, it's definitely. I think that's where things like that kind of have to start, like in these smaller towns, because in bigger places, it's just much more difficult to tackle. In a place like Evansville, if you like a guy like yourself was to walk into Costco right now,
I can't compete with those prices.
Yeah, it's not going to happen. I think the way you would like for it to go, and that's just the reality of it. But I think these small changes and things, especially that you're doing, and the comments that we kind of made earlier, talking about, it's like, it comes back to the money, and then them being in bed with the pharmaceutical companies, and then they, you eat things that make you sick, and then you're forced to go to the hospital, and it's this huge revolving door. And then so I do believe that. I do believe there's evil people in the world out of the sake of money, but then there's like a darker part of it too that makes me think that like, it's not about money, because those same people are the ones that are in power of like printing the money. Yeah. So like they can get that whenever they want. Part of me thinks that there's just like evil people that want to do bad things.
I do too. Yeah.
To like, not like, I mean, whatever, but I do think there's the whole thing going around right now that we're like, the spiritual battles going on. There's all that's negative, and there's a fight to the death of positive and negative right now, of good and evil, whatever that means to you personally. But like, and I do believe, and like,
absolutely,
I do think there's like so much more shit going on right now in the world that like we're not aware of.
Absolutely. And
I think that there is negative things being cast from all different angles.
You could go down all kinds of rabbit trails with that. You can get into the conspiracy theories about, that there's this secret society, this world cabal that is fueled by child sex trafficking. Like that's a real thing that's floating around, and we diminish. So I don't know that I've ever said this on a podcast, but my daytime job is I'm a sex crime detective.
Okay.
So primarily what I work is like child molesting and rapes, things like that. So with that being said, there is such a level, and I'm jaded to that a little bit. So like, not that I think that all people are like this by any stretch, but I see it a lot.
Yeah.
And I'm involved with a lot of people that see it on even bigger scales than I do.
Right.
And the human trafficking ring is so real. Mm-hmm. Child sex slavery is so real. The child pornography business, dude, it is unreal the amount of money that people make off this. And to say that the U.S. government isn't involved in some form or fashion, those are big statements for a podcast. I firmly believe that they have been involved. Now, we won't get into the politics of what's currently going on, but I think that there have been people in power that have been fueling those things. I mean, you could go down the Epstein, rabbit hole. That's a dark hole.
Very dark.
It's a multi-billion-dollar industry.
It's very real.
It's very
I don't care
real.
what anyone says. I don't. I won't even hardly like entertain that argument because I'm like, I can't. Like
the number of actors, the number of political figures, the number of
where's Ellen? Where did Ellen go? She's been gone for months.
The
no
whole
one wants
Tom
to know.
Hanks thing. I mean,
like Ellen's just gone in Canada after everything happened. She literally packs bags, moves countries, and everyone's like, well,
and then there's the things about these people, these actors that have moved to foreign countries, and they're moving to countries that have very weak
extradition laws.
I was going to say very weak restrictions on these types of things. They don't prosecute people for crimes against kids like they do in the United States. Thankfully,
it's actually, I feel like, practice, especially like Middle Eastern countries. You see a lot of it. It's so to bank off your comment. Me and a coworker of mine, we talk pretty frequently about, yes, there are evil people, but it's a spiritual thing. Sure.
Like we see a lot of, like I said, like a lot of the child molesting, that's a demonic thing.
Absolutely.
Like I think people can rationalize, when someone beats an assault, a battery, something like that. Like, you were angry with me, so you punched me in the face. Like, people can rationalize that. But you mess with a child.
There's no rational. It's something about this.
That's so messed up. It's demonic.
Something about the innocence. Mm-hmm. That's where I have like such a problem. Obviously, like the age, but it's like it's deeper than that. It's like it's like the innocence which comes from the young, a child, all these things. But like I have a very big problem with like something like things that happen to people that just like either like did not deserve it or like had nothing to do with them or like just innocence in that. Like something about that has always said like very wrong with me to like see someone that's like, damn, you just didn't like.
Yeah, absolutely.
You didn't. Well, that wasn't for you, Like,
I can relate to that. So that's why I ended up taking this position or applying for this position that I'm in. Like I worked the road as a police officer for years. The more that I've worked for the government, the less I trust the government. And I was arresting people for, like I was in the military too. So like I took an oath to defend the Constitution and also took an oath to defend the Constitution of Indiana and uphold the laws of Indiana whenever I became a police officer. So with that being said, like I still have an obligation to, arrest someone for, if they've broken the law in Indiana, I still have an obligation, if it's an arrestable offense, to make that arrest.
Sure.
But I was arresting people for things that I'm not going to say that I was just kind of unsure on whether I agreed with the law or not. But I can firmly get behind arresting people for rapes, child molesting, sexual batteries. Like I had no issue with any of that.
Because the law's not always as black and white.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But people have a soft spot for that. Like most of society will look at those types of crimes and say that person needs to go away.
Sure.
Like that person, if they did commit that crime, if they are convicted, they need to be put away for a long period of time. And I can get behind working for something like that.
Yeah, I feel that. I get that. I see where you're coming from. It would definitely be, it's like, however you feel about it, but it's like pulling the guy over the speed limit and like you got to take him in for a little bag of weed he had stuffed down in the seat. But it's like But then you hear stories about what's happening to our kids in this country, and we're like, I can't focus on this guy that had a joint. Like, I just can't worry about him. Like, I can't.
I get it.
And like, it just. So thank you for doing that. Thank you for doing this. I didn't know that you did that specifically. That's I'm sure that's a very emotionally overwhelming job to have.
It can be, but it's also very rewarding.
You're someone that's very grounded in your faith, though. Am I correct?
Yes. People have asked many times, how do you handle that? Because therapy, you go to therapy or, whatever it might be. One, I've got a phenomenal wife that'll listen to me. But secondly, I am a Christian. Yep. And having that faith, being able to take that to the Lord and just say, hey, God, you do what you need to do, it helps. Mm-hmm. And even just the motivation to work hard for that, I do believe that's something that does come from the Lord.
Yeah.
So
for sure. Is there like religious stemming kind of going into like homesteading?
Mm-hmm.
Is there because I feel like that's kind of like the way you live now is sort of like kind of live like Jesus did type of mentality.
Sure.
Does that make sense? Like what I'm kind of getting
I do believe, and
I just didn't know if you had any like connection with that.
I believe that God calls us to steward the things that he gives us, whether that's our personal finances. I think that we're called to be good stewards of our money. Mm-hmm. I think that we're called to be good stewards of our kids. If mm-hmm. I am not stewarding my children well, why would I be asking the Lord for more kids or, whatever it is? He's also given me land. And I do believe that it is my job to steward the land that he's given us and do it in a way that's not going to degrade what he's given me. Mm-hmm. And so if I'm only taking, and that would be one of the kind of the primary functions of our farm is we do say that we are a regenerative agricultural farm. That
was the second thing I wrote down.
Yeah, so
was that regenerative farm? Whenever I was doing my notes, regenerative farming. That's going into
so with that, we want our farm. If I die in 50 years, then I want my farm to be. I want the land itself, the physical ground under it, mm-hmm. to be better than the way that I got it in my hands. And I do think that the things that we
isn't that what I feel like we're obligated as humans. That's like the one thing we're obligated, I feel like, to do.
Absolutely.
Especially for our kids.
Sure, absolutely. Like leaving it better than what it was before.
The way that we
if
had
I borrow your truck, my goal is to bring your truck back. And if I take it in mud and, or get it dirty, I'm going to wash your truck before I bring it back to you. Yeah. I'm not going to bring it back with less gas in it than what it had before. I'm going to fill it up for you.
It's like, I don't want you to go through what I went through.
Sure,
that's why I do what I do now so you don't have to later.
Yeah. So even things like the way that we manage our animals, the rotational grazing practices, not using certain chemicals on our land, mm-hmm. Growing vegetables in a certain kind of way, leaving the roots in the soil, like that creates life underneath the ground for us. If you were to go in most, I'm not going to say all, mm-hmm. and again, this isn't a jab at big ag, but if you were to go into most big ag fields and take a scoop of soil out of there, there's not a lot of life in it. Like microbial life, mycorrhizal fungi, those kinds of things.
Even just like insects, I feel like that kind of thing. Worms. I remember you just playing in the dirt and there's like worms everywhere. I don't like my soul. I mean, I don't just roll around in the dirt a whole lot these days, but still, I just feel like, I don't know, maybe I was just playing a lot more in the dirt. Maybe
yes,
I don't know.
So, but when you look at that soil versus like the garden soil that we have or the soil that's in our field, mm-hmm. you can go out and get a shovel and scoop that up, and you're going to see all kinds of worm activity. Yeah. You're going to see bugs crawling around there.
And that's probably good.
It is living soil. Again, my opinion is living soil creates living food. Living food creates living people, or you can say healthy and for all of those words too.
Yeah.
But that's kind of our.
That's where we all return.
Yeah.
And one day we'll all be dirt again.
Absolutely. So that's where, yes, I do think there's 100% a correlation between the Christian life and homesteading. I think they're, I'm not going to say, 100% one and the same, but they walk hand in hand with each other. If you are stewarding the things that God's given you, then that includes the land that you have. That includes the food that you have. I want the food that I'm growing to honor the Lord. I want the money that I'm making off of this to honor the Lord. Like we made it a goal in our marriage. You know, we tithe 10% of all of our income, and we've done that for years, and we've seen huge financial blessing from that. So even with our farm,
I'm sorry,
tithe. So we give 10% of our. It's just a biblical principle.
Okay.
You know, you keep 90, the Lord gets his cut essentially. So we give that to our local church. So we've done the same thing. That same principle we have done with our food. So we do give quite a bit of our food away when it comes to, you know, if my goal is 1,000 chickens, at least 100 of those chickens I'm going to donate. And usually we try to find, most of the time we're trying to find a family in need. And we've done that before. Like we had a lady in our church that her daughter passed away, and we donated a number of chickens to her last year or year before. Those are things we want to be able to do for people. We feel like we have been incredibly blessed, and we want to take that blessing and be able to give it to other people.
Yeah, it's I just keep thinking of the word selfless.
Sure,
that's the word that keeps. I'm like trying to think of.
I fail at that in many other ways, but
I'm like trying to. I'm trying to put that into a sentence and like of what I'm like getting at. But it's just definitely receiving your blessings, acknowledging them.
Yeah.
And then understanding that, you know, it's not really for anything if I kind of keep this to myself. Well, you know, what really is any of this life if we just kind of shelter it and keep it to ourselves and we don't share
When we die, we ain't going to keep it.
Right, yeah. You have nothing left. You're just gone. And
it's,
I see where you're coming from. I see.
And the lessons that it teaches your kids. Like these lessons that we're learning from the farm, we're able to pass those off to our kids. You know, the Bible talks about, you know, leaving a legacy for your children. That's something we want to leave. We want to build. The Bible even talks about building businesses that can be passed on to your children. Like that's something that we want to do for our kids, so that one day, even if I'm not dead, like my goal is not to force my children into working for our farm.
Right.
But when you look at, there's nothing unbiblical about making a lot of money. Like I make it very clear, like I want to be wealthy. Like I want to make a lot of money. You can impact a lot of people with a lot of money.
Sure.
And the wealthiest people, it comes from family businesses most of the time.
Most of the time.
So if I can create something now that, say, Olivia loves raising chickens, whenever Olivia gets old enough and she says, I want to raise chickens with you, I will pass off that aspect of the business. You take it from 1,000 birds a year to 10,000. My oldest, she loves music. She's much more artsy. Like I can't sing for nothing, but she loves creating music.
Yeah.
Maybe she does more of like the filming or the video editing or putting music behind, you know, videos that we're making, things like that. And she can run with that. Maybe she ties in like marketing or something with that and learns how to do all that kind of stuff. And Jocelyn loves the gardening aspect. Like, okay, girl, you run with that garden aspect.
Physically run the farm.
Yeah. You know, whatever that kind of looks like, you know, and they don't have to. Like, I could have a daughter that if she decides she wants to be a nurse one day, go be a nurse. Like, let's do it. Like, I'll support you in that. But I want you to also have this option if you want to do it. I would love to see, we could go down a rabbit trail with the whole, you know, big education stuff, and universities and all that kind of stuff. But if my kid, I don't want them to feel pressure from a school to have to go to college. If they want to simply... That's all it ever
was.
Yeah.
I look back and like...
You get prepped for college.
I was literally never told about anything other than make sure, Chase, you need to fill out your application for this loan that you're not going to get, but fill it out anyway.
Yes.
You know, like... Fill out I was like, I'm not going to college. And like, they always thought I was kidding. And then I never filled out the application.
Sure.
Then I went to college for like a year and a half and realized I was completely wasting my time.
Sure.
And I was like, what am I doing here?
And I think there's a place for college. If you're going to be...
Sure, yeah. I'm not like saying there's not.
Yeah, no, I know. If you're going to be a doctor or if you're going to be an engineer, like if you're going to build my bridge, I want you to have some kind of education. Yeah. Like I don't want to drive across that and fall into the water.
On my body?
Yes.
Yeah. Like do a little reading
completely
first.
Agree. Yeah. Completely agree. But if, you know, I won't mention certain degrees, but if there's certain degrees that if you say, I'm going to go study this and you're going to spend 80 grand.
Yeah.
And you're going to walk out and you're going to make $40,000 a year to pay back that huge loan that you've got plus all the interest. Like, especially for young men these days, like trade schools. You go become a lineman these days, linemen make twice what I make as a cop.
Right.
And they're gonna go out and make, you know, $100,000 to $120,000 a year, and they're getting paid in school to go do that. I mean, you could be 18 years old, and by the time you're 20, you could be making 6 figures.
And not only in like, you know, whatever you want to say about it, but like those people too are just also so much handier individuals.
They are.
So much. And
yes.
like, I don't care if that upsets you, like, sorry, but like.
How many young men these days don't know how to change a tire on a car?
I've worked blue collar since I was 18.
Sure.
You know, like that's how it was. And like, it's whatever.
Yeah.
It's just,
yeah.
And I can say that I know a lot of people that went to college. I know a lot of people that didn't. Mm-hmm. And the wealthiest people that I've been around, that I have like been in rooms with, talked to, like laughed at the idea of college. They're like, yeah, absolutely not.
Sure. Like, and a lot of them are business owners. They create businesses.
Yeah. And they're running the business from top to bottom.
Yes.
And they do it very efficiently.
Yep.
And, you know, again, I think there's certain things like you should definitely go to school to learn how to do that. Absolutely. You want to like fly a ship into space. Like, yeah, you should probably.
Absolutely. Well, and you mentioned the efficiency. And I think that is a key thing.
College makes you very efficient on one thing.
Yes.
And that thing is not even practical most of the time.
Sure. With our farm, we want to get more and more efficient with everything that we do. So instead of like with our chickens, for instance, last year I had to carry 5-gallon buckets or a water hose out to the field and fill up each individual water each time. Our goal this year is to have an automated watering system to where I fill up one bucket on top of the chicken coop and it waters all of them. Mm. And so it's like much quicker.
Time?
Yes. Yep. Yes. So I can just fill up one 5-gallon bucket. It goes to a little nipple drinker underneath that they can all drink out of. If I can become more efficient over time with the systems that I have, it leaves me more time to focus on another aspect of our farm. Sure. And we're trying to get into even like farm stays. So getting into kind of the real estate, have people come and do almost like an event center type thing where we can have trainings. If you want to learn how to make sourdough, like let's have a class on how to make sourdough.
That's the hot topic right now.
It is.
I see some of that sourdough you guys are making too.
It's delicious.
Yeah,
it's
you're going to find me over there one of the days.
Breaking into the cupboard.
Yeah, you're just going to see a hand come through the window and that sourdough's going to go out.
So if we can take our time off of other things and put it into something else, and create that efficiency, then we have time to focus on other aspects of our business. And I think that's a key for many business owners is what's your level of efficiency? Because the more efficient you can become, you go from working your 40-hour work week to a 20-hour work week. Mm-hmm. You go from a 20-hour work week down to a 5-hour work week. Yeah. And I love that. Like, I love when these people, these business owners, Alex Hormozzi, I think is his name. I don't know if you ever follow any of his stuff, but he talks a lot about just efficiency in business. Mm-hmm. And if you take like two people and, you're creating, or, let's just say, I think you used the example of like creating a logo. If you have this guy over here that can do it in an hour, and you have this guy that over here, it takes him 8 hours to do the same exact logo, that the argument is that you would pay this guy less, the guy that does it in an hour, because he spent less time on it. I don't think so.
That's not how it works.
That's not how it works. He got really good at his job. Yeah. He learned how to be very efficient. Right. I'm paying him now for his efficiency.
Yeah. And a lot of time that's what you're paying for is time and knowledge.
Yes.
A lot of time you're paying for knowledge. Let's take a break. I want to pause this, throw in a new battery real quick. But yeah, just back to the efficiency. Talked about like knowledge, and whenever you're paying someone to do something, and a lot of times, you're not paying for really even the time. It is really about the knowledge, or how long did it take for them to learn to do that.
Sure. Yeah.
The training that it took and the years involved of learning to master that, to be able to do said task within the hour.
Sure.
And a lot of times that's what you're paying for. And yeah, I think a lot of people forget that.
Absolutely.
I think we've become such accustomed in a world today where it's like everything's like at the snap of your fingertips, and like
microwave society. Yep.
You can have it right now, and like whatever. And yeah, I think we lose whenever it comes to those kinds of things, you realize that you forget, like, no, this takes time and takes practice and a lot of training. And kind of jumping back to kind of wrap this up, we're going to get into vaccines.
Yeah.
And I was interested to just kind of hear a couple of your takes, because I'm absolutely skeptical. Mm-hmm. Especially whenever you get into the topic of autism and the alarming rising levels that we're seeing. And this, to just clarify, and I'll say this only once because it's never a shot. I'm not taking shots at autistic people.
Sure.
Saying that, like, I have a problem with autistic people. That's not the point. And that's like, I feel like people, whenever you get into this kind of conversation, a lot of people think that you're like personally attacking and you're like, no, these people are like bad, or like, it's like, no, that's not what I'm getting at.
Sure.
What the thing is you can't deny the fact of, like, these vaccines, whenever you're pumping these kids full of these things, it is causing problems.
It is. Yeah.
At a very high level. And you hear the stories, and I know someone personally that has the same story of what did not have any issues as a child, walked in, gets 20 vaccines in a day, and walks out autistic.
Sure. So
I've heard it. I know someone personally that will, like, tell you that same story.
Yeah.
And, like, at some point, again, it's not the autistic person that is, like, the problem, but it's someone that was perfectly healthy that now has to deal with these things whenever they probably shouldn't have had to have.
Yeah, there's no argument that that's on the rise, and I don't have the science to back up a lot of this, but just from observation and just things that Haley and I have read. When the whole COVID thing happened, we just started to question vaccines in general, and I'm not even necessarily an anti-vaxxer. I wouldn't throw myself into that category, but I'm very pro know what you're putting in your body and pro-choice in the way of let parents make that decision for their own kids.
A lot of people's problem is that, like, again, a lot of people aren't wanting to go full anti-vaxxer.
Sure.
But people are just like, no, I just want you to be honest with me.
Yeah.
That's what I want. Like,
we get a lot of questions.
If these things are causing issues, just tell us that.
Yeah. So, and we've been pretty vocal, I think, on social media about, like, our oldest kids have had more vaccines than some of the younger ones, and our youngest has none. Like, we didn't give our youngest child any vaccines at birth. We had her around the COVID time, and so we were just like, we're not doing this. Like, we don't have enough information to make an educated decision on whether we should do this or not.
Can I ask you if you noticed any differences? Like, is it...
So, I would say... I know that's so, like, Haley and I have talked about, like, some of our older kids have quirks, and I don't know that it wouldn't by no means fall into, like, the category of what even doctors would classify as autistic.
Sure.
But there have been some health issues that have come up that, as Haley did most of the research on this, as she was researching what different vaccines can cause, we definitely were seeing some of the issues with some of our kids. So we have one that she had really bad asthma. And asthma is another one of those chronic diseases that has been on the rise. See, I mean, as vaccines have gone up and the amount that we give kids have gone up, we've seen there has been an increase in the number of kids that have asthma.
Did your wife have asthma? Ever
neither one of us have. And I'll say this to preface it. Whenever I'm considered fully vaccinated by the standard to which from 0 to 18 years old, whenever I was 0 to 18, like that schedule, I'm considered fully vaccinated. Yep. I had 12 vaccines. 12. Now it's over 70 for a kid the same age. Yeah. So these from an early age, each of these vaccines has 4 or 5 vaccines in each one.
Were kids just falling off?
I don't know.
Like, were we just seeing kids just every day just felt like croaking out because of just like, we were like, no vaccines, we were just so low on them.
Sure.
Like, what do you mean? To go from like 12 to 70, it's like, what was
definitely
happening?
A monetary bonus. So I have been able to talk with physicians so I used to work off duty for, I won't even say the name, but a local healthcare system as a police officer. And I talked to some of the physicians there, and they made comments that they would get $50,000 to $80,000 bonuses if they met certain criteria for a certain percentage of the kids that they would see, that they would get bonuses for if a certain percentage was fully vaccinated. So if they kept them on schedule.
People saying that.
Yes.
What about like doctors getting kickbacks for?
Yes. So
there's an incentive. They were saying that wasn't true.
I know.
Depending on who you ask.
But I also, during COVID, I worked at a hospital as well.
Yeah.
And the physicians there were telling me, do not get this vaccine.
Yeah.
But they couldn't say that to the public.
Sure.
Like they'd be shamed if they said that. So those are things that were coming up. The vaccine walk with us. So we had a daughter that had asthma, really bad. Like we were making middle of the night trips to the hospital multiple times because of her not being able to breathe.
Gotcha.
And we started to have to, the pediatrician was like, hey, we need to send her to a specialist. We started going to a specialist in Louisville. She was on 3 medications for asthma that was taken every single day. And so we're like, there's got to be something different. And she was still having some of these asthma symptoms.
Right.
And so we're like, there's got to be something different. So we started, we do attribute that probably, there's a high likelihood that it's attributed to the vaccines. But we can't say for certain. So we're like, we want to fix this. So we read a lot about how diet affects asthma. And there was a lot of research done by some Germans on raw milk, the correlation between raw milk and asthma, and people that had asthma being cured of asthma after they started drinking raw milk.
Really?
So
I don't drink a lot of milk. So.
Sure. So we're like, we're going to try this. So we found a lady that would sell us some raw milk, like black market raw milk.
Yep.
And yeah. So we start drinking that. They told us that she was going to be on these medications the rest of her life.
Yep.
The specialist did. And they wanted to see her 4 times a year, once a quarter.
Right.
And so we started doing the raw milk. Within 6 months, she was off all medication. And the pulmonologist said, the specialist in Louisville was like, what have you been doing? We're like, well, we changed her diet and we started giving her raw milk. And you would...
They tell you to stop?
They looked at us like they looked at us cross-eyed almost. They're like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
And so... We just told them, like, this is what we've been doing, associated with prayer as well. And the doctor's like, well, you don't need to see us anymore. And so we go back to the pediatrician. The pediatrician thinks that we're nuts, but she's like, okay, whatever you're doing's working. And so since then, this was...
How can they look at you like you're nuts?
I know.
And like,
but 2 years in...
And how bad do they want to like discredit what you were trying to tell
I know. 2.5 years later, she's not had one asthma attack. She's not been to the doctor once over this. Her, like when they do those breath tests, she's perfectly normal in all aspects, which that was over a 6-month period that she got to that level, which is unheard of for people that have asthma.
It's almost like we were given everything we needed to be healthy in the business.
I know.
And it's right here in front of our face all the time.
Yeah.
And like we got so caught up in this corporate just monster of money and...
I know.
Boards of trustees and you know, like it just turned into such it's like we just made things so complicated and then like it basically we started to kill ourselves in the process, and we're now finding out that like we go back to like our roots a little bit and like we're much healthier people and things.
I agree, and I was just gonna say that there are a significant amount. So as people have come to us and ask, we get messages frequently about, do you know doctors that will support this, no vaccine thing? There are more and more doctors that are coming out of the woodwork that are on board with this. Like if people get the idea that you can't find a doctor, reach out. Like there are plenty of doctors in the Southern Indiana, Southern Illinois area that are very supportive of this. They will not judge you. They will even tell you to your face, like this is a choice that you and your family need to make for you. If you have questions, I can give you my personal opinion. Like the doctor will give you their personal opinion. They can also give you just the stereotypical, this is what they taught us in school. Yeah. So,
that's what a lot, it sucks, but that's what a lot of them do. It's just, because I'm just here to get this paycheck and I get paid really good and I got a badass vacation in 2 weeks. Absolutely. Coming up. Like, and it's sad, but that's how it is.
Yep.
And, it just, it's just wild that, especially you're talking about like them looking at you like you're crazy and like, well, whatever. And I was like listening to a story of this guy on a podcast, and he had a baby, and he said like as soon as they had the baby come out, he's like, I barely just got to hold my child, and they were like trying to pull it from me and start jabbing it with it. He was like, can we hold off on that for a second? And he said it was like very upsetting to the like health professionals in the delivery room that he was like trying to hold off on this. And that's like a scary thing. And I hope that like whenever me and Bradley have a baby that doesn't happen, because like
You had to put your foot down, and that's what we did. So like when we had
this can get messy in this operating room right now.
Whenever we had our last two, I was in there with I mean I was in there for all the kiddos, but whenever we had especially like the last two, I stayed with the baby the entire time. Now, granted, with Olivia, we didn't know what we know about vaccines now, but with Adeline, like they ask you beforehand, do you want these shots? And we said no.
Yeah.
Then we had the baby, we had Adeline, and I stayed with her until until she was back with mama.
Yeah.
And they asked me again, like away from even my wife, like, hey, are you sure you guys don't want these? I'm like, nope.
And if you would have just said yes, they would have
baby
done
with
it.
nothing.
They would have never went and asked your wife. They wouldn't have. It. If 100%. You would have just said yes, they would have just went and done it.
Yep.
And that's scary and it's upsetting.
It is.
And it's that like frustrates me to hear. And like that's what I mean. Like you don't want to be that way with like your nurses and doctors, but like, God, whenever you're talking about your kids, like don't make me be like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like,
absolutely.
No, like I told you no, like this is how it's gonna be. Like, and that's very scary. Like like scary in a sense of like a physical like protecting of like your child. You don't want anything to happen to them, and the fact that they're like trying to be little weasels around, like especially with like your wife not in the room, and it's like man, like
I get, and like, part of that may even be just their protocol.
Yeah,
but that needs to be a change from the top down of like change this protocol so we're not dealing with this.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note that I don't think that it's like nurses going to work every day and they're like oh I'm gonna
no,
get
not at all.
Babies.
They're phenomenal people.
No, they're being told what their bosses are telling them to do, and I get that. That's not my problem is with them. My problem is that it's the people above
system.
Them, that the system that they're being implied to use as practicing medicine, in today's society, and like that's like where the problem is.
Yeah.
It's the overall system and the way they've constructed it, and the way that some of these healthcare, the way they did with the vaccines, the way they fired people for not getting them, and the way that if you're not following protocol or you're questioning the system, and people are losing their jobs.
How many veterans got kicked out because of the vaccine?
Yeah, hopefully now being all reinstated.
Yeah, back pay.
Should damn right, every single one of them. It's wild. Yeah, the viral video of the woman. I know this is like a little bit different, but it's just like the woman that. The cops are trying to talk to this guy, and she wasn't supposed to let him. Well, this lady gets arrested, loses her job, and so these nurses, they're going to work and they're trying to do their jobs and not get fired. They've got families at home, and they've got kids at home, and husbands and wives, and
absolutely.
So those people are heroes. My wife is a nurse. Okay, so no, I'm not sitting up here just dogging nurses.
Yeah, so is my wife.
It's not my point at all. My point is bigger than that. My problem is bigger than that. Than with individuals themselves. So yeah, is there so wrap this thing up here. We're moving forward. We're in 2025.
Yep.
What's the big plans? Oxford Farms. What do you kind of see 3 years?
So
Where are
we're really trying to kind of get into some of the educational aspect of this. Like I said, we're also looking into the kind of the real estate of doing farm stays and things like that. But I do a lot of the reels and things like that on my Instagram, on Facebook. But we've kind of shifted gears with our YouTube, and we're trying to do some filming for more educational pieces. So if people have questions on specifically, this is how you set up a chicken brooder, this is how you set up a pig pen, this is how you rotationally graze your animals, this is how talking about sourdough. This you want to make sourdough starter. Like let's start with the basics of that. Like you got to have a starter first.
One of them classes.
All right. So even going beyond YouTube, we want that to be a YouTube thing, but we also want. I'm a hands-on learner.
Sure.
And so if I can have people come to our farm and get hands-on experience on butchering a chicken, like let's do that. Let's do a pig butchering class. Like I can break down a pig pretty good, but if it's just something as simple as hiring someone to come in and say, hey, I want you to teach an audience of people how to butcher a pig, then we want to do that. So we're really looking at more of the educational aspect of this. I think we're going to come to a point where I think that America as a society, we're going to teach people how to do something as simple as boil water.
I think you're on the verge right now. I don't know if people realize it, and I don't know if you do. I think that you're like on the verge of right now of probably how a lot of people will be living.
Yes. A few years from now.
A few years from now. I think you're going to see a huge change in this and the way people are going about getting their food, the food that they're willing to buy.
So I guess if I was to wrap up what I foresee in 3 years, I want to be a training center. Like and I say that kind of I'm not necessarily talking about a building, but just I want to be somewhere that if people have questions on this is how I do this, that either I can just tell them myself, or there's an ebook attached to that, or there's a hands-on workshop. Yes, the dummy version of this.
Yeah.
I don't need all the fluff.
Yeah,
I don't like reading a 300-page book. Like, if you hand me a 300-page textbook, like, I'll smile and take it from you, and I'm probably going to be like, where's the Audible version? I need to listen to this.
Yeah.
But if you can hand me a simple step-by-step guide of this is how you butcher a rabbit, this is how you butcher, whatever it is, or this is how you need to, I don't know, create a casserole, like make a casserole, like this is how you do this. You want to learn how to grow potatoes, here's a step-by-step guide on how to grow potatoes.
Yeah.
Just something like that.
Yeah, I think a lot of people would, you hear all the time, and I've heard people, make the comment about, I would love to get into that, but I don't really know how, or or every time I try to do it, they die, or I can't.
A lot of it comes down to just starting. Like, and I feel like I've said that so many times in some of my reels, like just take that first step. Mm-hmm. Chickens are resilient. Like, if you can provide them a warm spot, like just something as simple as chickens, just buy a few chickens. They're very inexpensive to buy. Realize that death is part of having a farm and owning livestock. Like, you're probably going to lose a chicken or two.
Right.
That's normal. Yeah. Just know that that's going to happen and prepare for that. If you're a super soft person around that, like, I think death of animals is sad, but that's not going to keep me from butchering my own chickens to feed my family. Right. So the starting, for most people, it's just simply taking the leap and starting to do it. Mm-hmm. I think people want someone, and if I can be that person that grabs you by the hand and leads you right to the water, then so be it. But I would rather someone just get their hands dirty and try it themselves first, and then come and say, where did I mess up?
Yeah,
so
definitely. Well, Zach, I appreciate you taking the time out of your day, man.
Yeah, man.
I do this. I was thinking after I had gotten a hold of you, I want to share this story with you, just because I've been thinking about it. After I hit you up and asked you to come over, I was like, I was thinking, and I was like, I haven't spoken to Zach in a really long time. But I was like, I've known Zach for a long time. I've known Zach for probably most of my life. And I was just thinking back, and I was thinking about any moment I may have had with you in the past. And I just remember, this is what comes to my mind whenever I think about you, is back on Wednesday nights.
Yeah.
In Norris City at Crossroads. And I used to go up there on Wednesday. Yeah. And the reason that stuck out in my mind is because I remember I didn't know anyone there. Okay. And I wasn't a big church goer. I always felt like I stuck out, I didn't really belong and all that kind of stuff. But I remember every time I would go on Wednesdays and you were there, you would always speak to me, and you were always so polite, and you always had the most uplifting, smile, fun attitude. And so I just want to let you know, sitting here with you now, all these years later, that's the impression that you left on me.
Well, thank you.
I'm sure you're leaving that impression all over the place.
Thank you.
So to sit down with you now, I just wanted to share that with you.
Thank you
for coming here. Thank you for being here today, man. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Hopefully, as things progress, we'll have Zach back on, hopefully in the future, and hear more about this farm as things keep going. So,
yeah, man.
Thanks for being here. Thanks for watching. Love you guys.
See ya.